Page 6, more. You can play it just exactly the way it's written is fine. However, I'm going to make a few suggestions, starting with the right hand. Now, it's not a change, but I want to point this out to you. Take a look at on top of page 7, the first measure in the right hand. The G, you're playing with the third finger. The 2/8 notes, look at the fingering on that. It's a 2, 1. That prepares you for the E coming up. I recommend that. That's good. Now, in the first line on page 7, the last two measures, you see those 2-note slurs here? Even though the pedal is going to muck that up, I still recommend you do those slurs in the right hand, and it's a down, up, down, up, down, up. See the wrist is flexible there, it's down, up. I recommend that. That's good. You need to learn to feel that kind of a pattern. You get it a little bit at the bottom on the last line, second measure. I'll change the fingering a little bit. You're starting out with a 1/5 there, and then a 4. For the third beat, I recommend a 1/5 again, not a 1/4. So you can do a 4 on the F sharp, and that you're ready for the next note. In the left hand, I don't really have any suggestions for the left hand. Just play it the way it is. It's fine. Take a look at the second measure there at the top of page 6 in the first line. You see all those notes tied? So you're playing the E. Hold it down. Now play the B. Now you're going to hold them both down and play the E. Now you got all 3 notes going. Okay, and that's legitimate. It's called finger pedaling. It's where the fingers are holding notes down longer than you may normally hold them down, so the sound continues. Because we don't want to use the regular pedal, because that will screw up the right hand. It'll mess that up. We don't want to blur it. So we're finger pedaling the chord to make it sound like the pedal's down when it really isn't. This is very common in the piano. You get that again on the next line, you shouldn't be a problem. I hope you did okay. The pedal. Let's talk about the pedal just a little bit. They establish a pattern which makes sense to me, and then they change it, and I don't understand why they're doing that. If you take a look right at the first measure, you're pedaling the first 3 beats, then lifting it up on the 4th. And if you think about it, that pattern actually works very well in this piece. Throughout, pretty much, almost. It's that. Of course, you don't need the pedal at all in the second measure. They're showing pedal in the last couple beats. I would not pedal the second measure at all. Just leave it. This way, the last beat of the measure is by itself. The right hand is by itself. And you can use this pattern throughout this whole thing. It's like the first line on the last measure. There on page 6. That quarter note, if you lift the pedal up, that can be all by itself. Because the left hand has a rest anyway, so why not let it be by itself? So I would recommend on any of these patterns where the last beat is doing something, lift the pedal up and let the notes be by themselves. The only exception to that would be on page 6 in the last line. When you get that pattern, it happens again on page 7, but that pattern, I would keep that pattern throughout, keep the pedal down throughout. It's legato pedal there. This is for contrast to what you were doing before. You don't want to always do everything the same throughout the piece. We like a little variety. So if I lift the pedal up on the last beat, it's that. But the right hand isn't by itself because the left hand is playing a note. It's different. So I recommend leaving the pedal down through it. Now, when you get to the top of page 7 and the left hand has a rest, I would lift the pedal up so those two eighth notes are by themselves. So we get that. Yeah, a lot of what I talked about on page 6 applies to page 7. So you can, when you run into the same pattern, the same thing, I would apply it to that spot on page 7 also. That should just about do the pedal. One last thing in the left hand at the bottom of page 7. Take a look at the second measure. They're showing 5, 1, and then a 1 again. It's okay, but I recommend a 5, 2, and then a 1. I'll show you a little more advanced technique that you'll get in. Maybe you will. I don't know if some people ever get this or not. In the left hand, on page 7, the last measure, you have a G and a D. And it's 3, 1. And the pedal's down. And now you're going to go down and you're going to play the low G, this G, an octave lower here. Okay? The first G is a whole note. Okay? So the actual G that's being played is from the D. This note goes to this note because that note stays down the whole measure. So it's here. It's really the way it is. The pedal is down, so sound-wise it doesn't matter. I'm just pointing this out because it has to do with a little bit of interpretive technique which can help you later on when it might matter. And that is, which alter the fingering so that we keep the whole note G down the whole time. Because if I do this, and then this, I've lifted up both of those notes. I don't want to do that. I want to leave this note down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to substitute, and that way that note stays down for both of them. That happens pretty quickly. Okay, but that is a type of a more advanced fingering technique that you might run into. In some cases you'll get it with no pedal, and you have to do it with the fingers. I want to point that out. It's a subtle little thing, but we are dealing with subtleties in music. Anyway, let's try this out slowly and see what happens. It's in common time, so I'll give us 4 counts. Right hand here. Left hand here. Foot's on the pedal. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go.